All right, welcome to the Young Turks. Cenk Ugranik is sparing with you guys. Look, I'm of two minds today, and we do an unusual show here, right? First of all, we do the facts, that's already unusual. And then we have commentary and analysis, and that's not always the key there. And then we have a giant range of emotions on the show. And so today will be an excellent example of that, because I'm having trouble containing my anger and disgust at what Israel is doing. And honestly, the folks who, I can't believe it, but that are still defending it to this day.
I know, it is amazing.
It's stunning. It's okay, I got you. 6 months of genocide, enough. Like, I get it, people are biased, they can't help themselves. But Jesus, guys, Jesus. Okay, so we'll get to that. But then at the bonus episode for the members, we're gonna start Operation Bliss. I mean, what a crazy topsy-turvy show we got for you today. So for the members, I'm going to start explaining how I think that we could all be a little bit happier. That's so strange, I know, but I think you guys might really like it. You might even love it. So let's try that for cooler heads, lovelier heads, blissful heads, okay? Today's topic is going to be how to choose happiness. Yeah, look, for those of you who hate that kind of stuff, go ahead and barf in the corner and then come back. But I think some of you will love it. So anyway, good day to be a member, and we need it, guys. So tyt.com/join. You can see the thermometers on tyt.com/team. You could join that way. You could hit the join button below. All right, but let's get started with the news.
Well, we do start with a devastating and infuriating story, an update on the ongoing war in Gaza. Let's do it. 7 international aid workers with the World Central Kitchen have been killed by Israeli airstrikes in Gaza. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has taken ownership of the deadly strike, but brushed it off as a mistake. But was it? I think it's important for Americans to judge for themselves, for the international community to judge for themselves, as we learn more and more details about the 3 separate airstrikes that happened back to back, which led to the killing of these 7 humanitarian aid workers coming from different countries around the world. Now, video from the scene showed some of the aid workers for the charity, which was founded by celebrity chef Jose Andres, were wearing bulletproof vests. But let's talk about how it went down. And this is according to reporting from Haaretz. So the charity says a convoy of 3 vehicles had been traveling in a conflict-free zone in 2 armored cars marked with the charity's logo. In fact, if you look at some of the footage, you'll see that one of the airstrikes hit one of the vehicles in this convoy right on top, where you can clearly see the logo for the charity. They were on their way to a humanitarian aid warehouse in central Gaza. After unloading 100 tons of aid at that warehouse, the convoy proceeded to travel back on a pre-approved route that the IDF knew about. They knew about their existence. They knew their exact coordinates. This was something that they actually coordinated with the IDF in an effort to remain safe as they're trying to deliver this humanitarian aid. Now, they claim that they gave the IDF their exact location. Sources tell Haaretz it was then when the IDF was given the order to carry out the strike against the aid workers. So here's how the convoy was hit. And you read about the details and it's just absolutely devastating. So the first vehicle in this humanitarian aid convoy was hit by a missile from an Elbit Hermes 450 drone, which is manufactured by Israelis. According to Haaretz, people can be seen emerging from that vehicle, trying to escape and get into the second vehicle in the convoy. At that point, the IDF does another drone strike to hit that vehicle. At that point, the third vehicle in the convoy attempts to save the individuals who were hit with that drone strike, or try to get those passengers into the third convoy or third vehicle in the convoy. And at that point, Israel carries out the third drone strike. All 7 individuals in this convoy were killed. And if it seems unlikely that Israel would intentionally target and kill members of a humanitarian aid convoy, keep in mind that back in late November of last year, Politico actually reported this. I just want to give you a few excerpts here. The Biden administration has been providing Israel with the location of humanitarian groups in Gaza for weeks to prevent strikes against their facilities. But Israel has continued to hit such sites. The information included GPS coordinates of a number of medical facilities and information on movements of aid groups in Gaza to the Israeli government for at least a month, according to 3 people familiar with the communications. Still, Israel has launched operations against Hamas in or near aid sites, including hospitals, leading to the destruction of buildings and the blocking of fuel and other critical supplies. And so in this particular case, the argument that's being made by the Israeli side is, well, the IDF thought that there was an armed terrorist within that convoy.
Yeah.
Okay, so of course, there's no evidence of that at the moment. Let's go to Haaretz, where they report, according to sources acquainted with the details of the incident, the operation room in charge of securing the route identified an armed person on the truck and suspected this was a terrorist, just suspected. So let's do 3 drone strikes on the suspicion that there might be an armed terrorist within the convoy, which there's no proof of, by the way. By the time preparations were made for the attack, the truck arrived at the warehouse together with 3 World Central Kitchen vehicles carrying 7 volunteers. Minutes later, the 3 vehicles left the warehouse without the truck on which the armed person was allegedly sighted. At some point, while the convoy was traveling on the authorized route, the operations room ordered the drone operator to strike one of the vehicles. All 7 volunteers were killed. And I need to give Associated Press a little bit of credit for how they frame this, because this is absolutely correct. Throughout the war, they write, Israeli forces have shown readiness to inflict widespread destruction when they believe a suspected militant is present or when ground troops see a tactical need to strike. Homes with families sheltering inside are leveled by strikes almost daily. The military has struck ambulances and aid vehicles, saying that armed fighters were in them. So this tends to be the tactic that you hear from the IDF in regard to why they carry out these strikes, knowing full well that the strikes that they're carrying out are going to kill innocent civilians, and in this case, humanitarian aid workers.
Yeah, so if you still think that Israel is not killing civilians on purpose, you're either a giant schmuck, totally blinded by your bias, or you're an American politician bribed by AIPAC, illegally bribed, or you're a mainstream media reporter who's afraid to say things that are true. But now these days, most of the reporters are saying things that are true because it's super obvious. And when you kill civilians on purpose, there's a name for that. It's called terrorism. And right now, Benjamin Netanyahu is easily the world's largest terrorist. So let me explain, because these are not just, insults. These are backed up by facts. So let's take this one apart. So in the beginning of this conflict with Hamas, I am such a sucker and a dupe that I might have believed Israel if they had done this on October 8th or October 17th or 27th, etc. I probably would have believed them, even though they had already murdered so many journalists and so many innocent Palestinians, like, of course, Shireen Abu Akleh assassinated one of the most prominent Palestinian journalists and an American citizen, and they shot her in the neck with a sniper with no conflict anywhere around. So Israel's been purposely murdering journalists and aid workers and Palestinians now for decades. So, but nonetheless, I probably would have been enough of a dupe to believe that this might have been an accident. But at this point, guys, number one, here they admit they knew what it was. Did you hear what Anna said? They said, yeah, we thought there might have been a terrorist on board. But they're not saying we didn't know that it was aid workers. We didn't know that they were delivering food. We didn't know that it was humanitarian relief for Palestinians. No, they're saying we do know that, and we knew we were murdering them, but we thought it was justified because maybe there was a terrorist on board.
I mean, just complete disregard for human life.
Like, that's it. There's no argument about it. If you're making an argument that it was an accident, no, you be more precise with your language. It was not an accident. They very, very, very clearly said we did it on purpose. We meant to murder those people because we thought it was justified. Because if there's one Palestinian on board, they're a goddamn terrorist and will murder anyone near a Palestinian. So that's the Israeli government now. Okay, but more overwhelming evidence. Why is it my opinion even changed in the last 6 months. So where I can now say I'm absolutely certain they're doing it on purpose. Well, look at the evidence, guys. 196 humanitarian aid workers killed so far in this conflict. That is 3 times more aid workers than killed in any conflict in the same period of time. 3 times worse than the Russians, than Assad, than you name it, okay? So you're saying you have to admit that this is true. If you say that all of that was a mistake, then the IDF is the world's most incompetent military. They don't know where they're shooting at all. Oops, we killed 3 times more than the worst butcher in the whole world. We killed 3 times more aid workers. Okay, how about the journalists? 99 journalists killed. The worst in a conflict in this period of time since they started recording these numbers in 1992. Oops, we did it again. We murdered all those journalists, all by accident. We killed more than Putin. We killed more journalists than Putin, okay? And let alone all the other dictators in the world. But you're asking us to believe that was all an accident. That's insanity. Let alone the 6-year-old girl. Again, Israel told the coordinates of a 6-year-old girl inside of a car. Her family's been killed already. They're saying, do not kill her, we're sending an ambulance. Israel says, go ahead, send the ambulance. You know what they do? They track the ambulance, murder the 6-year-old girl and everyone inside the ambulance. You're telling me that was a mistake? But then we saw people surrendering, white flags, no shirts, including Israeli hostages. And yesterday we shared with you Haaretz inside Israel, great reporting, pointing out, yeah, there are kill zones. And the IDF will murder anyone inside a kill zone, even if they are unarmed and civilians.
Right.
And that's why they kill their own unarmed civilians, because they're like, oh, they're inside a kill zone, murder everyone here. Oh, oops, they turned out to be Israelis. We care about their lives. Implicitly, you don't care about the Palestinians you've been murdering. And by the way, why is this such a giant news event? Because they killed 7 people who were largely foreigners.
From, various countries.
Because the Palestinian lives don't matter to Israelis or Americans or to these Western governments. They don't matter at all. Butcher them, 32,000. You think Israel accidentally killed 23,000 women and children? Come on, who's that stupid enough to believe that? No, I'm sorry, I know, it's mainly not stupidity at all. It's mainly deep, unwavering bias. Israel is the good guy, no matter how many people they murder. No, sorry, they're not. Right now, it's not permanent, guys, and it has nothing to do with religious background. But right now, Israel is clearly one of the worst governments in the world. They have massacred more people than almost any government. Now they're murdering civilian workers. Finally, let's get to why they did this. Why did they? I mean, this is going to draw international condemnation. There's an Australian, a Polish worker, an American, a British. All the governments are going to have to pretend to be upset with Israel, and they're sending billions of dollars and more bombs and jets. We are so mad you killed our citizens. Where's my money? Give me the AIPAC money. Give me the donor money. Okay, send them more weapons. Kill more. Who cares if they're Americans? Kill more, says Joe Biden. Be honest, Joe Biden's a monster. Okay, so why they do it? Because now that organization, along with several other aid organizations, have withdrawn from Gaza. So now the Palestinians will starve quicker. Mission accomplished. That's the terrorist that Benjamin Netanyahu is. #1 terrorist in the world right now.
So I want to kind of regroup, reset to talk about the victims and more importantly, I wouldn't say more importantly, but the reaction by our government to me is just, it doesn't do justice to the people who were killed at all. So, following news that the IDF carried out 3 separate airstrikes back to back, which killed 7 humanitarian aid workers from various countries, Benjamin Netanyahu came out and made excuses for the deadly drone strikes, and unfortunately, the United States government has provided cover for Israel. So before we get to the US government and their reaction, I want to talk a little bit about the victims here. So the victims included one Australian woman who's a longtime humanitarian aid worker by the name of Zalmi Frankcom. 3 British nationals, a Polish man by the name of Damian Sobel, and an American-Canadian dual citizen, a Palestinian driver from Rafah, was also killed in the drone strikes. Now, in response to this, Benjamin Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel, came out and took ownership, saying that this happens in wartime. Does it? Does it happen in wartime?
It does if you're the leader.
Do you target a humanitarian aid convoy in war and just slaughter them? Okay, well, he also continues to say, we are thoroughly looking into it, are in contact with the governments, and will do everything to ensure it does not happen again.
Total lie.
That is a lie, because this has happened. This has happened multiple times. This time it's really, really standing out, considering the fact that these are international humanitarian aid workers. And so Israel and the way it has carried out this war on Gaza has essentially alienated Israel and the international community. This kind of situation that we're talking about right now will further alienate Israel from the global community, which is why the Israelis who have taken to the streets to demand the ouster of Benjamin Netanyahu and his far-right government are doing the right thing. He has been incredibly counterproductive to Israel and the people there. Now, let's talk about the reaction from John Kirby, who held a press conference today and was asked about the intentions of the IDF in carrying out these 3 drone strikes back to back, which killed everyone in that humanitarian aid convoy. Let's watch what he had to say.
Is firing a missile at people delivering food and killing them not a violation of international humanitarian law?
Well, the Israelis have already admitted that this was a mistake that they made. They're doing an investigation. They'll get to the bottom of this. Let's not get ahead of that. Your question presumes at this very early hour that it was a deliberate strike, that they knew exactly what they were hitting, that they were hitting aid workers and did it on purpose, and there's no evidence of that. I would also remind you, sir, that we continue to look at incidents as they occur. The State Department has a process in place. And to date, as you and I are speaking, they have not found any incidents where the Israelis have violated international humanitarian law. And lest you think we don't take it seriously, I can assure you that we do. We look at this in real time.
They have never violated international humanitarian law ever in the past 5 to 6 months.
I'm telling you, the State Department has looked at incidents in the past and has yet to determine that any of those incidents violate international humanitarian law.
Well, our State Department lacks any and all credibility. The Israeli government has admitted, and this is based on reporting by an Israeli publication, Haaretz, that they knew the coordinates of the humanitarian aid convoy and that they intentionally struck the humanitarian aid convoy because they suspected that the convoy may have had one armed terrorist. There's been no evidence of that. It was just based on a suspicion. And they had no problem carrying out 3 separate drone strikes back to back that slaughtered 7 innocent people as they were attempting to deliver food in Gaza. Cenk.
So let's be clear, John Kirby's obituary, hopefully many, many years from now, should start with John Kirby helped to commit a genocide, helped to murder tens of thousands of Palestinians, and covered up the war crimes on behalf of Benjamin Netanyahu. He's a genocide denier. He's a genocide aider and abetter. He's a terrible, immoral human being, as is his boss, Joe Biden. I don't ever want to hear anyone telling me Joe Biden is such a sweet, empathetic man.
Agreed.
No, he's empathetic to people that are in the room. And who's in the room? AIPAC's in the room, Raytheon's in the room, ExxonMobil's in the room, every donor and lobbyist is in the room, and he has overwhelming empathy for them as long as they bring a check for his corrupt, disgusting, vile office. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
But if you're a Palestinian, he has nothing but contempt for you, and he finances your genocide. So right now, John Kirby with that outrageous, I mean, of all the things. Now, you know how Ronna McDaniel, everybody ran her out of town because, I can't believe she supported the big lie of the 2020 election. True, okay, I agree with that. How about this big lie?
Well, this big lie is okay when liberal media provides cover for it. Let's keep it real, Cenk. Overall, in terms of mainstream media, there is absolutely a pro-Democrat bias where you can literally have John Kirby lie to the American people with a straight face about how there's no war crimes committed by Israel when we all know they are, that there are. We have seen them, we have covered them. The international community is in agreement about the war crimes that are being committed. But no, John Kirby is a respectful human being, whereas the liars on the right wing, well, we shouldn't at all give them any fairness, any credit. It's Look, this is the reason why there is distrust toward the media. This is the reason why, Trump supporters will not trust anything coming out of the CNNs of the world, the cable news outlets of the world, and the New York Times, Washington Post. If they're not being fair, they're just not fair. They will provide cover for Kirby, for sure.
So you are 100% right, and let me double down on that in a couple of ways. Number one, imagine now if that was Trump's spokesperson, Pentagon spokesperson, and it wasn't Israel, it was Russia. And Russia had just killed 32,000 people in Ukraine, 23,000 of them women and children. Russia said, yeah, we targeted the aid workers on purpose because we thought there was a Ukrainian terrorist on board. And so we murdered them all. Oh, by the way, we target ambulances. We've destroyed every hospital in Ukraine area that we control. We've murdered 99 journalists, more than any other conflict since we started tracking it in 1992. We've done all of these things, but the Trump administration says they haven't committed a single war crime. Well, everyone in media would laugh them out of the building, and they would say the big lie and outrageous, and Donald Trump is owned by the Russians. And the Russians completely control him because of money, et cetera, et cetera. You know with absolute certainty, even if you're the most hardcore Democrat, that they would say that.
Absolutely.
But you switch it to Biden and Israel, and all of a sudden, barely a peep.
100%. Now, I do want to give some of the journalists at that presser with Kirby some credit because they did ask some good questions, including whether the Biden administration would ever reconsider providing weaponry to Israel as they continue carrying out the slaughter of innocent civilians, reporters, and yes, even humanitarian aid workers. Let's watch.
How can the U.S. continue to send military aid to Israel without any conditions? Is there no red line that
we've had this discussion, you and me, quite a bit from up here. They're still under a viable threat of Hamas. We're still going to make sure that they can defend themselves, and that 7th of October doesn't happen again. That doesn't mean that it's a free pass, that we look the other way when something like this happens, or that we aren't and haven't since the beginning of the conflict urged the Israelis to be more precise, to be more careful, and quite frankly to increase the amount of humanitarian assistance that gets in. I haven't been asked about it yet, but I expected I would be. There was a discussion just yesterday with our Israeli counterparts about Rafah. Now, this one was done virtually. We expect it'll be an in-person meeting here in a week's time or so. But the whole reason to have that meeting was to talk about our concerns over a major ground operation in Rafah and to present viable alternatives for them to be more precise and more targeted.
Cenk, the other thing that really stands out to me about this current leadership we're experiencing here in the United States is how much the Biden administration seems to love posting their L's, right? In this case, we wagged our finger at Netanyahu and said, don't be a bad boy and don't do this and that, don't invade Rafah. And then Netanyahu, without fail, goes on television and says, we're gonna invade Rafah, F off. And that's embarrassing to the American people, okay? This is not strong leadership, it's embarrassing.
And do you know what Kirby and Biden did after Netanyahu slapped him across the face? They said, here's a free $2.5 billion gift, courtesy of the American taxpayer. Please murder more Palestinians.
Yep, exactly.
And then they said, and by the way, we'll then sell you an extra $18 billion, including 50 F-35s, 2,000-pound bombs, so you can murder more Palestinians. And by the way, why are they doing this? So you can get your feelings hurt, and you could call me any name in the book you like. AIPAC. AIPAC says they're gonna spend $100 million in the next election, and whoever kisses their ass more, and in their case, yes, they're theoretically getting money from American citizens. I would love to have that investigated. No one will ever investigate AIPAC in terms of, are they really getting it from American citizens, or is it foreign citizens that are also funneling in money? I don't know, I legitimately don't know, okay? But let's assume they're American citizens. But they say we are American citizens that care about Israel. And we want America to serve Israel. You're to do whatever Israel says. I don't care if it's a left-wing government, a right-wing government. Shut up and do as you're told. And Joe Biden and John Kirby and almost every other politician in Washington says, yes, sir, thank you, sir, absolutely, sir. And they bow their head. If you're going to claim that AIPAC and the $100 million that they're spending is not relevant to the politicians, please say it out loud. I'll debate any prominent figure on the left, right, or in the middle who wants to make the lunatic argument. I would love to have you on camera, on air, make the mentally deranged argument that politicians don't care about the millions of dollars that they're getting from AIPAC or AIPAC might spend against them. Go ahead, I dare you. Say it with a straight face to the American people. Lose all credibility. It isn't about just, it's definitely not about AIPAC being Jewish. It's about AIPAC being lobbyists. The same goes true for Raytheon, ExxonMobil, and Pfizer, okay?
Yeah, it's important to really differentiate the notion of a Jewish lobby, which AIPAC is not, with a pro-Israel lobby. AIPAC is a pro-Israel lobby. In fact, many of the funders to AIPAC are evangelical Christians. So this is not about Jewish people at all, okay?
Yeah, and it's in the name. They have Israel in the name. They another group that's associated with them, Democratic majority for Israel. They say, we are giving you money, or we're gonna spend tons of money against your opponent, as long as you do as you're goddamn told and serve Israel. It's true of any country. They could just get American citizens that are aligned, and they do. They just don't have quite the same amount of power that has accumulated over the years as a lot of other lobbies have accumulated power. But yes, Joe Biden doesn't mind Israel. In fact, aids, abets, finances the murder of tens of thousands of Palestinians because he gets paid to. So that's a fact. Your pretty little heart can break over it. You can call me dirty names. It doesn't change the fact that not only is that an obvious fact, everyone in America agrees with me. So maybe everybody in Washington agrees with you and you could feel great about that. And yes, you have power and we don't, right? But it doesn't make what you're doing right. It makes you morally reprehensible. I don't want the John Kirbys and the Joe Bidens of the world to ever darken my doorstep. They are evil, deeply immoral characters, and history will write that they gleefully funded a genocide and then covered up the crime.
We're gonna take a break. When we come back, we'll switch gears entirely and talk about some domestic politics, including a Supreme Court decision out of the state of Florida involving reproductive rights and abortion bans. You do not want to miss that story. It definitely has the Biden camp smiling today because they definitely intend to use this for political purposes. I'll tell you exactly what I'm talking about and more when we come back.
Let's go to YouTube Super Chat first. Michi28 says, this government is a joke. Yep, 100%. Benjamin Morrill says, Cenk, I'm in Connecticut and I voted for you today. I know why, right? Because you're not a monster, free Palestine. So this is what people are reducing. I'm out of the race, right? But people are still voting for me in Connecticut and other places. Somebody else wrote in that they wrote me in Wisconsin today. Why? Because they cannot stomach voting for Joe Biden. Writing, checking off the box for Joe Biden means you're checking off how many more Palestinians would we like to murder? Because he's definitely going to murder them. I'm the bad guy? I'm the bad guy for saying things that are obviously true. No, all of Washington go F off. Like they could do whatever the hell they want. I don't want any piece of those monsters. All right, anyway, thank you for voting for me, even if it doesn't mean anything. It's not a nice gesture, I appreciate you. And every one of those votes do get, are historic in a sense, because I was the first naturalized citizen to run for president and get votes. Modern Relic says Kirby's worse than useless. Obviously, Kirby's one of the bad guys, he's evil. Insufferable Smarty Pants says, I was lured to TYT by Anna. She's a good looking woman. After a day or two, I'd quickly realize that I agreed with a lot of what she had to say. A year later, I'm in love with the whole crew.
Oh, what?
Okay. That's awesome.
But remember, I brought this person here, okay?
Yes.
It was me.
And their handle is Insufferable Smarty Pants. Okay, now the Smarty Pants are in our corner.
All right, I will allow it.
Well, there she has now allowed it. Okay, you're welcome. All right, anyway, thank you for having an open mind. That's the most important part. Peter Rodriguez says, Anna looking on fire today. Love that dress.
Guys, it's sunny today. It's sunny and beautiful outside. I think that's why I'm in such a good mood.
Yeah, well, you alone. Okay.
I mean, yeah, the news usually gets to me, but the sun, it's very healing.
Yeah, I hear you on that. The instructor says, saw a clip that was the last time they were alive of 2 of the aid workers making a film preparing food to feed people in Gaza. So sad.
I saw the same footage, and yeah, it's absolutely heartbreaking. The Australian humanitarian aid worker was also fairly recently interviewed on MSNBC, and I watched that interview, and it's just, these people put their lives in jeopardy to help others, and we cover so many stories where those types of people don't really exist, and so it's just, the whole thing is so tragic, heartbreaking, and to have our government provide cover for it on behalf of Israel disgusts me to no end.
Well, you guys saw these beautiful people that are trying to help people in desperate need. The leaders of the IDF saw them and thought, oh, I can't wait to murder them because that way we can starve the Palestinians quicker and easier. Okay, Dave Jones said, sickening. This is already having a chilling effect on the little aid there was. Dave, I think that was the entire point. Everybody, the whole world now just saw those aid workers getting killed. Every aid organization has to say, do I want my guys killed? I gotta pull them out, otherwise they're gonna murder them, right? And I can't have them murder my guys. So now all the aid workers have to leave and the Palestinians starve quicker. IDF is the largest terrorist organization in the world right now. Back on TYT, Cenk and Anna with you guys. Tom Story, Dana Albrecht, and Bizzle. Thank you guys for joining. We appreciate you. They hit the join button below. We're trying to get to 100,000 members by the end of the year, and that'll make all the difference. It'll sustain us and get us past this storm that we're in. Benjamin Morrow, thank you for gifting a membership as usual. Anna.
Well, let's talk about Florida potentially handing Biden a massive win for the upcoming general election, especially since they continue to pursue legislation that most people are not in favor of and have punished Republicans for in the past. So, the state of Florida is now free to ban abortions after 6 weeks, and that's according to a new ruling by the state Supreme Court. Now, the new law, which can now go into effect, impacts nearly all abortions at 6 weeks, which is before most women even know that they're pregnant, which is effectively a full-blown abortion ban. But the court's decision also allows for a proposed amendment that would protect abortion rights in the state, and that amendment would be put up on a ballot for the state's residents to vote on. So ultimately, Floridians will have a final say on reproductive rights in the state. But first, let's talk about the court permitting the strict abortion ban. So back in 2022, Ron DeSantis signed a 15-week abortion ban passed by the GOP-controlled state legislature, which was almost immediately challenged in the courts. Then in April of 2023, just weeks before he announced that he was planning to run for president, he signed a ban after 6 weeks. Now, the 15-week ban has already been enforced while the 15-week ban has been enforced while it's being challenged in the courts. The 6-week ban was written so that it would not take effect until a month after the 2022 law was upheld. So yesterday, the conservative-leaning court found 6-1 that the 15-week abortion ban enacted in 2022 was constitutional. The ruling, in response to a lawsuit brought by Planned Parenthood, the American Civil Liberties Union, and several abortion providers, will allow the six-week ban enacted last year to take effect by May 1st. The ban, by the way, does include exceptions for rape, incest, and the life of the mother. But considering the fact that Texas passed a similar law, we've seen how this has really played out. There was a woman who had complications with her pregnancy, and she was unable to get the courts in Texas to agree to allow her to get an abortion as a result, even though that pregnancy was not viable and also put her reproductive health in jeopardy. Now, Planned Parenthood and the ACLU argued that the Florida Constitution's privacy clause explicitly protects the right to abortion and should remain in force. The privacy clause in the Florida Constitution states that every natural person has the right to be left alone or let alone and free from governmental intrusion into the person's private life. The Florida Supreme Court first ruled that it applied to abortion in 1989. In 2012, voters rejected an amendment that would have exempted abortion from constitutional privacy protections. But the current Supreme Court disagreed. In the majority decision authored by Justice Jamie Grosshans, she says, "We conclude there is no such basis under the privacy clause to invalidate the statute. In doing so, we recede from our prior decisions in which, relying on reasoning the US Supreme Court has rejected, we held that the privacy clause guaranteed the right to receive an abortion through the end of the second trimester. Based on our analysis, finding no clear right to abortion embodied within the privacy clause, Planned Parenthood cannot overcome the presumption of constitutionality and is unable to demonstrate beyond a reasonable doubt that a 15-week ban is unconstitutional." So in 30 days, the ban will go into effect, but it's not just women in Florida who will be impacted by this. Florida has been one of those states where women in other surrounding red states have traveled to in order to get their reproductive rights met. But now it's going to be incredibly difficult to do so. Here's one doctor explaining the ramifications of the ban last year as it was making its way through the legislature.
A 6-week ban here in Florida means that patients from around the Southeast will have to travel potentially even further or just may not be able to access care. Every week, we're seeing patients from Alabama, Georgia, Texas, Arkansas, Louisiana, who travel hundreds of miles to Florida, which is the nearest place for them often to access care, so that they can get the care that they need. So certainly this 6-week ban will be devastating here and around the Southeast.
So before we get to the ballot initiative that could actually save reproductive rights in Florida, I wanted to have you weigh in, Cenk, because look, there's the real world ramifications for human beings, for women in this case, but there are also some political ramifications for the Republican Party should this actually go through and be implemented in the state of Florida. We know that Republicans have already suffered electoral losses as a result of their stance on reproductive rights. And the Biden camp is kind of salivating over this because they see this as a campaign cry, essentially, to get people to vote for him in Florida.
Yep. So two different issues here. One is between the courts and the legislature in Florida, and the other is a political issue that Anna's referring to. First of all, I don't know if you'll be surprised, but I actually don't think that the courts are wrong here. So I'm not a conservative. I don't think that there should be. I think Roe v. Wade was great legislation and wasn't legislation, but it should have been. And so I'm as pro-choice as it gets. But they're saying, well, the Supreme Court said there's no right to privacy in this context. Well, what are they supposed to do, right? And I don't even think that that's a bad argument, to be honest. So, but that doesn't mean the legislators. What the court is saying is we're deferring to the legislators because there is no constitutional issue here. That doesn't mean the legislators have to take away your right to privacy and a right to abortion and reproductive rights and the ability to control your own body, right? They're choosing to do that. That's why they're the bad guys. So if you live in Florida and you vote for a Republican, they're gonna take away your right to choose what to do with your body. That's now a stone cold fact. It doesn't matter if you're offended by how I phrased it. It's a fact. Republicans in Florida are against women controlling their own bodies, and they will take that freedom away from you. They act as kind of a Gestapo, looking for who's pregnant, was it a miscarriage, was it an abortion? I'm gonna judge you, judge your whole life, judge how you handled the pregnancy. Did you ever smoke, did you drink, did you, etc. Then I'm gonna blame you, I'm gonna put you in jail. And I'm gonna capture your body because I don't believe in freedom. So here we are back in the South, okay? So that's who the Republicans are, and I understand it. Now, when it gets to the politics of it in terms of Democrats versus Republicans, well, guys, we're all screwed. We're caught in the middle here. There's no one to vote for. They're all monsters. They're all, work for their donors to begin with. So that's a stone cold fact. So Democrats, if you want me to lie on your behalf and say you're angels, you're not. You'll do anything a donor tells you to do, okay? Now, having said that, the Republicans, you just can't vote for them. So we're left with a choice of, do I hold my nose, my ears, my eyes, everything, and just vomit all the way through the entire process and vote for a Democrat? Or do I not vote at all? Because you can't vote Republican. Republican means, yeah, take my freedom and I now serve you. I'm your servant and you could do whatever you want with my body and then judge my whole life. I'm a woman, I don't count.
What's incredible?
So after Republicans, no chance I'd ever vote for monsters like that.
What's incredible is they're still operating as though, what was it called? The moral majority is still incredibly powerful and influential. Their own voters, Republican voters, want to keep abortion legal in the first trimester, the majority of them, right? When you poll everyone in the country, regardless of political affiliation, 2/3 of Americans want to maintain reproductive rights. And that has been manifested in previous elections. The midterm election was supposed to be a red wave, and it wasn't a red wave, partly because of the backlash the Republican Party was facing due to these abortion laws that have passed in various states. And so, much like other red states that have taken this issue to the ballot box with a ballot initiative, I suspect that Floridians are going to strike down the possibility of a 6-week abortion ban in the state of Florida. I could be wrong, and if I'm wrong, I'll come on the show and I'll admit that I'm wrong.
They're definitely. So look, that's not the issue. The issue is whether the corrupt legislators are going to allow ballot measures. Because remember, Florida passed a ballot measure saying that ex-felons could vote, and then the legislators were like, "Oh, that's inconvenient. They're voting for Democrats more. We think they're voting for Democrats more than Republicans." So then they started chipping away at that ballot measure. And they started taking away those votes, and then they started imprisoning people who voted when they thought it was legal to vote. And so legislators have done this, and this time it's almost exclusively Republicans. We're the most honest show. We rip the Democrats on a daily basis. They do horrible things all the time, mainly on the national level, but yes, sometimes on the local level too. But when it's ballot initiatives, it's almost always Republican legislators go, I don't like it. They passed an anti-corruption one in South Dakota saying you can't take lobbyist gifts anymore. They're like, well, so what? And they ripped it up and they said, we're gonna take the gifts anyway. We're Republicans, we're corrupt and we're proud. So here, they'll try to take away your votes in Florida. You're nuts to vote for a Republican, totally nuts. They're even more corrupt than the Democrats and they hate your freedom. They want their version of religion to control everything you do in your life. Why would I vote for that? That's insanity. I'm not in your stupid, look, your religion is not stupid or smart. It's yours, it's not mine, okay? And for me to follow your rules, no, that's the exact opposite of the point of this country. It's not just about women, it's about the idea, does your interpretation, and almost always a barbaric interpretation of your religion control all of our lives or not? And if you vote Republican, you're saying, yes, I want some random evil person to interpret the Bible and make all of us do their stupid interpretation. No deal.
So just a few details on the amendment that voters in Florida will be able to make a decision about. So the court did rule 4-3 that a proposed constitutional amendment that would guarantee the right to abortion before viability, usually around 24 weeks, could go on the November ballot. Now, how would it be written? What would it do exactly? Well, the proposed constitutional amendment that will be on the November ballot says, no law shall prohibit, penalize, delay, or restrict abortion before viability or when necessary to protect the patient's health as determined by the patient's healthcare provider. It provides for one exception that is already in the state constitution. Parents must be notified before their minor children can get an abortion. And if you're wondering, well, how do the people of Florida feel about, keeping reproductive rights intact? Excuse me. To pass, keep in mind they need 60% of voters in November to vote in favor of that constitutional protection. According to a November University of North Florida poll, 62% of voters indicated that they would vote yes on the abortion rights ballot measure. More than half of Republican respondents, 53%, said that they would vote affirmatively. So that poll does have a margin of error of 4.37%, but honestly, the results of the poll didn't surprise me, considering you see similar trends nationally when these polls are done by other pollsters, including Gallup, Pew. You get the point.
Okay, so look, I ask Democratic voters all the time, why do you bother to go into a primary to vote for a corrupt establishment Democrat? Why do you get out of bed to be like, oh, rah, rah, I hope that they give ExxonMobil even more subsidies? What's the goddamn point? So I ask Republican voters now, if 53% of you want reproductive freedom, then why are you all voting for Republican politicians who are universally against reproductive freedom? What's wrong with you? That's what primaries are for. Is it conceivable that a Republican that isn't more barbaric would win in a Republican primary? I don't know. You guys tell me, you're the Republicans, right? For those of you who are watching out there, is it conceivable that someone who doesn't want to take away our freedom, doesn't want to be backwards and barbaric, could win in a Republican primary? You tell me. But if you keep putting these guys back in, don't tell me you're for reproductive freedom, because you're not. You vote for guys who take away that right from women. So own it. So if you voted for DeSantis and you're going to vote for him again and you're going to vote for these Republicans, you're the one who wants to take away freedom from women, and don't pretend you're not. You are.
All right, well, we've got some fire for Democrats as well when we come back from the break. It's that time of the year, that time of the election cycle, if you will, where Hillary Clinton comes out and scolds us to basically guilt trip us into voting for who she prefers.
Oh, that'll work, that'll work. Yeah. If you thought I was angry before, yeah.
We've got that and more coming up, don't miss it.
Guys, if we get to the two goals that we're doing in this Riders in the Storm campaign, not only will we get out of the storm, I think we'll come out of it one of the strongest things in media. Why are so many reporters afraid to say the most obvious things, like the lobbyists control all of Washington? Because they're worried they're going to get fired. Why would they get fired? Because money in politics funds almost all of the rest of the news networks. They take tons of money from politicians. They serve politicians. Those are the top advertisers. Who do you think they work for? So get us to 100,000 subscribers. Get us $1 million in donations. We'll get through this goddamn storm that has knocked out almost every digital media company. And we'll come out so strong on the other side. They won't be able to do a goddamn thing about what we say. Oh, well, why don't we shut those guys down? They have all of these unacceptable opinions. They're always stating facts. We don't like those facts. It's interfering with our propaganda. Goddamn right it is. TYT.com/join/ Look, guys, on Team, we've got the thermometers, TYT.com/team, and you could also become a member through there. As you're doing that, by the way, if you want to name things in the studio, and look, that's our latest numbers right there. The membership number is actually a little bit higher. It takes a little while to update, but we appreciate you guys, okay? So let's get these thermometers filled up, and then we're gonna have the power. And I swear to you, there won't be anything they could do to stop us. And we're gonna just keep on telling the truth no matter what happens. So if you go to TYT.com/perks, you can name things. So if you're wonderfully generous, as some people were yesterday, gave $250, etc. If you do it through Perks, you'll be able to get T-shirts. You'll be able to name the studio lights, and the studio itself, and so many other things. My office. So check it out under TYT.com/perks. Okay, and I've got a debate coming up against Ann Coulter and Sohrab Ahmadi in Dallas, Texas next week, April 11th. So if you can, come to the Majestic Theater there, get tickets through the QR code or go.tyt.com/jankdebate. Okay, Konstantin Kaviris wrote in again on Super Chat with a poem this time. 7 stars from the sky, gone away, I ask why. Nothing more that I can say, no words to take the shock away. The best of us are here no more. God damn this effing war. I think that's actually really well said. Nicely done, Konstantin, thank you. Kevin Pilati wrote in, Cenk, I voted for you today in the Connecticut primary. While I don't totally understand why you chose to run, I respect that you took the risk, well done. I mean, look at the news, brother, you're right, but I mean, look at Biden, look at Trump. Why did I run? To give you another option, not necessarily me, but I wanted to shake up the race so some other person who isn't a monster would enter. Unfortunately, that didn't work. Little Mikey 3343 wrote in, we've reached such a level of depravity that our elected officials care more about campaign contributions than they do about human lives. They fear attack ads from AIPAC more than they fear funding a genocide. Where do I find hope in this? We find hope in ourselves and we find hope together. Stick with me. All right, back on TYT, Cenk and Anna with you guys. Insufferable Smarty Pants, whose comment we read earlier, that you lured over here, Anna, then gifted 5 memberships on YouTube. So
I did that.
Okay, God bless.
Because of me.
Well,
I'm kidding.
There's a little bit of truth to it, though. But thank you, brother. We appreciate you. Chatulu gifted 10. Tanya Dodgers gifted 1. Jules is over at 1005 gifted a membership. And Dana Albrecht, whose name I read earlier is joining, said, I've been watching since 2020, but just joined today since I know all support is much needed. That's exactly right, Dana. Thank you so much. Appreciate you. Hit the join button below or go to tyt.com/team to participate. All right, Anna.
All right. Hillary Clinton's back, unfortunately. It's that time of the election cycle where twice failed Democratic presidential candidate Hillary Clinton comes out and chides the Democratic voters into supporting her preferred candidate in the general election. Now, she did the chiding, she did the scolding during a recent appearance on The Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon. Let's get to how this exchange went down. It started with Jimmy Fallon saying, I mean, it's President Joe Biden versus former President Donald Trump. We know that. Clinton weighs in saying, yes, it is, it is. Fallon responds, what do you say to voters who are upset that those are the 2 choices? Clinton responds, get over yourself. Those are the 2 choices. And then Fallon says, yeah, I love that. Now, of course, Hillary Clinton loves that it's those 2 choices because in her mind, how could anyone even consider voting for Donald Trump? If you're a self-identified Democrat, if you're an independent, you must vote for Joe Biden. So let's get to those comments. She says, you know, it's kind of like one is old and effective and compassionate, has a heart and really cares about people. And one is old and has been charged with 91 felonies. I don't understand why this is even a hard choice, really. I don't understand it. Further, she says, but we have to go through the election and hopefully people will realize what's at stake because it's an existential question. What kind of country we're going to have, what kind of democracy we're going to have. And people who blow that off are not paying attention. I would argue the Democratic Party is blowing that off. The Democratic Party insisted on cheerleading Joe Biden running for re-election, knowing full well that he's unpopular, knowing full well that the dude's 81 years old and looks 81 years old, or I should say older than that. I mean, it's just, if you genuinely are fearful that Trump's gonna get elected and dismantle our democracy, you would want the best possible candidate to run against Trump. But the Democratic Party didn't allow for an actual primary election. So we, by definition, do not have the best candidate to go up against Donald Trump. But we must vote for Biden anyway, because democracy is on the line. If the Democrats didn't take that seriously, why should the voters? That's what I want to know.
Yeah. So the real problem here isn't even Hillary Clinton. Yes, she's
a huge problem.
No, she's just a great representative of the problem. And you could argue that's worse, right? Which is that she thinks that Democrats are entitled to your vote. And so get over yourself and do your duty to vote for me, vote for Joe Biden, vote for any corrupt hack that we put up here. And if you don't, it's your fault. To say that that's a bad political strategy is an overwhelming understatement, okay? If you can have overwhelming understatements. Yeah, so yeah, sister, I got news for you. Nobody owes you their vote. That's why you lost the election. You want to cry about it, that's okay. You want to blame the Russians and Jill Stein, you can blame anyone you like. It was your responsibility to win that election. And the way that you win an election in a democracy, you have to talk slowly because they can't understand words that come out of someone's mouth if they're not donors.
I know, Jake.
Hillary, hold on. Hillary, you have to convince the voters to vote for you by doing things for the voters because you are their representative. It's not that they owe you the goddamn vote because you're their boss and they should know their role. Every time you open your mouth, it sounds like you're scolding us and chiding us and telling us, wagging your finger at us, how to get over it. You better not vote for Trump. We already told you, you owe us the vote. We're entitled to it. The dumbest political strategy. Thank you, Hillary Clinton. If you want Democrats to win, you should not want Hillary Clinton to go anywhere near a microphone.
I mean, I totally agree with you on that. I mean, again, twice failed Democratic presidential candidate. Failed to win the primary the first time and lost to Obama. And then failed to win the general against Donald Trump. Should we really be listening to the woman who lost to Donald Trump?
Guys, I mean, that's such a great point. First of all, Barack Obama was an unknown when Hillary Clinton lost him. Okay, I mean, he was such a miraculous candidate. She blew the biggest lead there was, and then she almost lost to Bernie Sanders, lost a 50-point lead to Bernie. At least the other politicians and media liked Barack Obama. Everyone in Washington hated Bernie Sanders, and she still lost a 40-point lead to a 40 to 50-point lead to him. And then she goes and loses Donald Trump, whose IQ is in the single digits. If you lose to a moron, deeply immoral guy like Donald Trump, what does that make you, Hillary? These are things you're not allowed to say in Washington. These are things that, she is so. And later, Jimmy Fallon, so sad, man. It's so embarrassing listening to him. He's like, I went to a Broadway play with you, Hillary, and people applauded me because I'm famous. But when you came in, oh my God, it was amazing. All of New York and all of the elites that came to the opera or whatever the hell they went to a Broadway play, they all love you. The rich love you, Hillary. Yeah, the rich do love you, but that's not enough votes. Please, Democrats, can you get anyone who isn't awful at politics, who isn't corrupt, who isn't yelling at the voters to vote for them, and actually trying to do something for the voters? I know it's a revolutionary thought.
Yeah, I don't think that the Democrats should assume that they're entitled to any votes without actually listening to the voters. And I want to just go back to the very first quote. Let's go back to the first one, graphic 2, where she compared Donald Trump to Joe Biden, saying that Joe Biden is, he's old, but he's effective and compassionate, has a heart. How do you square that circle when Biden continues giving, like rewarding Israel's slaughter of civilians in Gaza with more weaponry? Like, how do you make it make sense? I want to understand. Because look, that argument might have worked prior to Israel's war on Gaza, but it's not going to work anymore. You can't make that argument as you see tens of thousands of literal children get slaughtered by a country that we keep rewarding, that the Biden administration keeps rewarding.
Well, the difference between you and Hillary Clinton, Anna, is that you think Palestinians are human beings.
I do, 100%, yeah. I guess Hillary Clinton and her brand of Democrats don't see it that way.
They don't at all. Hillary Clinton sees 32,000 dead Palestinians, 23,000 of them are women and children, and she thinks, oh, I wish we could rush them more money to kill more Palestinians. Oh, please. Oh, and Joe Biden's so sweet. He has so much empathy for the guys committing genocide. Zero empathy for the Palestinians that they're butchering.
Yep.
So that's the monsters that are. Okay, but I got to read one thing from one of our YouTube members. Terry Keating writes in, the problem is we have no choice. If we don't vote for Biden, then Trump will win. WTF are we doing? Well, Terry, that's the thing. So Hillary Clinton knows that, Joe Biden knows that, Democratic Party knows that. That's why they basically holding the country hostage and saying, ha ha, our opponent is hurt. Remember, Bill Clinton convinced Donald Trump to run against Hillary Clinton. Oops. And remember, Joe Biden tried to help Donald Trump win the Republican primary because he thought he was easier to beat. So both monsters were in a sense brought to you by the Democratic Party. I will never vote for Trump, okay? And I don't want to aid and abet Trump. And I don't know what I'm going to do at this point. But Terry, it's for you and I to demand better, and for the Democratic Party or any party to give us one non-corrupt, non-immoral candidate. It's not too much to ask for. So in any given election, do whatever you think is right, okay? But keep demanding better from the party that you have any kind of allegiance to, because it doesn't look like they have allegiance to you.
Yeah, I will not be voting for Biden, and I don't feel bad for it. We're gonna take a break. When we come back, we'll talk a little bit about the media censors over at Apple, according to Jon Stewart. Don't miss it.
Indisputable, exclusive, disputable, exclusive. We brought you this first. No other news agency has this video. No other news agency has this story.
Every week on Indisputable, we do original, exclusive, investigative reporting you'll find nowhere else.
Our reports have been viewed by millions. Hosted by Sean King, Ben Crump, Senator Jon Ossoff.
You, through your investigative reporting, unearthed very troubling allegations about specific forms of abuse and discrimination in the federal prison system.
We catching these cases on camera. Just imagine the things that we don't see.
Our groundbreaking investigations and exclusive interviews bring you the real voices no one else wants you to hear. We tell the stories.
Imagine a prison that is so racist, the corrections officers contact me. That is a life or death situation being created. A black woman who was driving for Uber was allegedly assaulted by a white male passenger. After we got involved, roughly 24 hours later, the police all of a sudden opened up an investigation. What was going through your mind when bullets were simply flying inside of your vehicle?
Honestly, I thought I was going to die.
Did these officers ever say that you fit the description of somebody they were looking for? Did they say that?
Never.
Okay, that means they lied.
And we want you to be part of our truth-telling movement. Send pictures and video of stories no one else is telling and a 1 or 2 paragraph summary of the story to Indisputable's exclusive tip line at indvideos@tyt.com.
If you have more information about what's happening at this particular facility, please let me know.
Together, we're challenging the system, and together, we're making a difference.
I have the entire background to this story, and it is going to make your blood boil.
Indisputable with Dr. Rashad Ritchie, unveiling the truth, empowering the people. Weekdays at 2:30 p.m. Eastern, 11:30 a.m. Pacific.
Today we're going to be speaking with Cenk Uygur, host of the Young Turks and also author of the new book, Justice is Coming.
Author of the brand new book that we have here, Justice is Coming.
How progressives are going to take over the country and America is going to love it.
His new book is out now, Justice is Coming.
Cenk Uygur,
he's got a book out.
I encourage every progressive and non-progressive to read it.
Very interesting, very thought-provoking.
2 main ideas. 1, that progressives are correct on these kind of policy issues. And 2, America is actually a very progressive country.
And it's a powerful read.
This will be banned in Florida. By the way, that would be kind of awesome. There's no question we're going to win in the long run. The country's that progressive?
You have given me hope, Cenk.
I do see you as a voice of reason on the left, and I hope people will check out your book.
It's for outsiders, and it's for progressives and populists that are looking to overthrow this system.
You need this book in your house.
They tell you that change is not possible, hope is not possible, justice is not possible. Do not believe their lies. Change always wins, and then we take off like a rocket.
tyt.com/justice.
I am scary, I am threatening.
I'm Darth Vader.
All right, back on TYT, Jing and Anna with you guys. And also, Chingaso Cat, thank you for joining through tyt.com/join. And Gasher, thank you for contributing through tyt.com/join. And you can see our progress on trying to get to 100,000 subscribers and $1 million on tyt.com/team. Thank you guys. Anna.
Well, let's talk a little bit about media censorship. It's a big story in the news today. We will get to Ben Shapiro a little later, but for now, let's talk about what Jon Stewart allegedly experienced over at Apple. Turns out that Apple, not big fans of Lina Khan, and according to Jon Stewart, basically prevented him from interviewing her on his podcast when he had a podcast with Apple. Now, Jon Stewart did luckily interview Federal Trade Commission Chair Lina Khan on The Daily Show recently and said the following: I wanted to have you on a podcast and Apple asked me or asked us not to do it. They literally said, please don't talk to her, having nothing to do with what you do for a living. I didn't think they cared for you is what happened, okay? Now, Lina Khan is definitely hated by the elite. She has been pretty effective in her role as the head of the Federal Trade Commission. She has been fighting monopolization and these big mergers. And as a result of her being so active, it's actually prevented potential mergers from even coming up, right? So it's kind of had a chilling effect on monopolies. Now, with that said, Stewart said the last part sarcastically, so I should be clear about that. He also said that Apple wouldn't let him talk about what he describes as AI's false promise. Like, what is that sensitivity? Why are they so afraid to even have these conversations out in the public sphere? Khan didn't really comment on Stewart's claim that Apple didn't want her on their platform, but she did respond by saying this: I think it just shows the dangers of what happens when you concentrate so much power and so much decision making in a small number of companies. In the same way that you need the Constitution to create checks and balances in our political sphere, you also need the antitrust and anti-monopoly laws to safeguard against concentration of economic power, because you don't want an autocrat of trade in the same way that you don't want a monarch. And by the way, I mean, we should talk a little bit about how media really works in this country, because while you might be under the impression that you have so many different options to get informed, much of our media actually falls under a select few major corporations. So we'll get to that in just a moment, but Cenk, I wanted to give you a chance to weigh in on this.
Yeah, so I've now worked in media pretty much my whole life. And I was an anchor on MSNBC and on Current TV. I was a contributor on many of these cable news channels, etc. I've been on radio, online, you name it. And there's one consistent thing outside of here at TYT, which is that money rules everything around you, okay? So advertisers are sacrosanct. And I remembered at MSNBC, they didn't want me to criticize an advertiser in one of my scripts. And that's because that's where they get their money. And by the way, one of their top advertisers are American politicians. They use the money in politics to buy ads on news stations. Now, in this case, there's one factor that's even larger when it comes to money, and that's the parent company's financial interest. So for example, MSNBC, before they turned left, was deeply conservative cable news channel, just like Fox News. They were trying to copy Fox News. This is pre-Keith Olbermann, pre-Rachel Maddow, okay? And they fired everyone who was against the Iraq war when the war was starting. Phil Donahue, Ashley Banfield, Jesse Ventura, etc. I wrote about it in my book, Justice is Coming. Why did they do that? Because at the time, the parent company that owned MSNBC was GE, a defense contractor. And they made an ungodly sum of money from the Iraq war. So they were very much pro-war. They were basically using MSNBC as a marketing outlet, not to do news, but to do marketing for things like war that would actually get them a lot more money. So Apple it was one of the most profitable companies in the history of the world, and currently today. So they're always in the top 2 to 3. That's how big they are, right? So Apple does not want to endanger its financial interests. And antitrust lawsuits and actually being able to break apart Apple is the #1 danger to Apple. So some tiny little show that they have on a streaming platform they have, even with a guy who's famous, etc. Oh my God, that is nothing compared to the other giant financial interests. So if he's gonna start, upsetting that apple cart, that's an easy kill for them.
They don't like that.
No, they don't, okay? And of course, I mean in the sense of terminating his contract, ending his show, etc. So is that why they got rid of him? Yeah, definitely. I could tell you right now that I would be shocked if that wasn't the only reason.
So Apple is in fact facing an antitrust lawsuit, but it's not by the FTC. That antitrust lawsuit having to do with the monopolization of the smartphone market was brought forth by the Justice Department. The FTC is actually not directly involved in that suit. It was, however, the FTC was involved in challenging other corporations and big tech firms, most recently pointing at Amazon, Google, and Microsoft. Like Lina Khan has been very vocal in wanting to break up these big companies, right? Now, with that in mind, while working on a House subcommittee, Lina Khan wrote a 449-page report calling for the breakup of large tech companies, including Apple, comparing them to Gilded Age monopolies, which is likely the reason why Apple did not want Jon Stewart interviewing her on his podcast, which was carried by Apple. But I want to go to the next graphic because this is something that was really emphasized when I was in journalism school, and it shows you why it is that our media is so broken, because it's really owned by a few major corporations. So if you look at this graphic, you'll see that in 1983, 90% of media outlets were controlled by about 50 companies. Through consolidation, that number is now way down. Comcast, Disney, AT&T, Paramount, Sony, and Fox own most of the news media that Americans consume. And that is a problem. It gives you the illusion of options in the media market. But in reality, when it comes to mainstream media, you don't really have much options because most mainstream media falls under the umbrella of 6 major corporations.
Yes, and now, by the way, Discovery's taken over for AT&T in ownership of CNN, HBO, etc. But the same idea holds. So, guys, that's why what we do infuriates a lot of the rest of the press, because we refuse to do what these guys do, which is suck up to advertisers that are, there's good advertisers, there's plenty of progressive companies and people trying to do the right thing in the world, wonderful, right? Happy to have them. But there's a lot of bad guy advertisers, defense contractors, oil companies, you name it, right? And we say no to those. And we don't just maniacally either support the Democrats or the Republicans and tell you a bunch of BS around it. So, but how many places are there like us? Not that many. Why? Because our financial interests are tied to you guys. Like, for example, paid members sustain us, right? We're trying to get to 100,000 members this year. tyt.com/team, help out, right? That way, we're indebted to you guys.
Exactly, yeah.
And if we're one of these big 6, like we merge into one of them, or we cater to all those giant advertisers that want to influence people in Washington, as a lot of these other companies do, well then, we're goners, because at that point, we're no different than the rest of them. They're all a giant monolith. That's why we show you guys on the show all the time. You'll see on culture war issues, they try to rip us apart. But whenever there's an economic issue, Fox News, MSNBC, and CNN anchors all unite. When it comes to Medicare for all, that would get you health care. They go, oh, how are we gonna afford that? Well, how are you gonna pay for that? Every single one of those supposedly antagonistic anchors all of a sudden agree. Student debt relief, how are we gonna pay for that? MSNBC anchors saying the same exact things that Fox News anchors are saying, right? Because they all have the same economic interest, which is not aligned with the American people or the viewers.
Exactly.
We're trying to align our interests with you guys. And so it's a big experiment. Let's see if we could be number 7 here. And by the way, if you think that's fanciful, you're wrong. We're top 10 in terms of viewership in almost all the platforms we're on. So we're not that distant from these guys, but we need the resources because we don't have their endless bucket of cash that they get from advertisers and parent companies. TYT.com/team if you can help. But bottom line here is Jon Stewart's an American hero who stood up to the powerful. And so I don't know how long Comedy Central is gonna keep him. We'll see what happens with Viacom, their parent company, etc. But hats off to Jon Stewart and Lena Khan, some brave folks who are trying to do right by you guys as they fight against the giant powers of corporate America. And that's, by the way, sorry, that's a misnomer. There is no America there. All of these corporations are owned by multinational interests.
Right.
And so Apple is a multinational company that has no allegiance to America at all.
True. All right, well, let's stay on the topic of media and censorship because one media figure who's been getting a lot of heat recently is Ben Shapiro following the ouster of Candace Owens.
I've got to ask you about the recent departure of Candace Owens. I know it's a subject that you probably don't want to discuss, but I would be remiss if I didn't at least go there. She left, it made tons of news. The right loves to eat its own, so they loved this. You know, either Ben's bad or Candace is bad, but somebody's bad and we love it. It's like the right likes to eat the left and they love to eat their own. They have absolutely no instinct for like self-preservation over on the right or like keeping their own coalition together. It's kind of interesting to watch. But I'm sure that whole thing was rather unpleasant. It's now spun into a debate about whether the Daily Wire is pro-free speech. The accusation is you are until it comes to Israel.
Megyn Kelly asked Ben Shapiro about the ouster of Candace Owens from the Daily Wire. And as you can see, Shapiro's support for free speech was called into question due to this line of questioning that you're about to hear Ben respond to. Now, was this about censorship? Was it about something more? Was Ben Shapiro the one behind all of it? Well, let's hear how he responded to Megyn Kelly and then we'll unpack it all.
What I will say is that we have a wide variety of positions on Israel right now inside the Daily Wire. Matt Walsh obviously is another one of the hosts at the Daily Wire. He and I wildly disagree about what America's Israel policy should be. Matt is much more isolationist. He basically believes the United States has no real interests in the Middle East, and thus the United States should not be providing material support to anyone, including the state of Israel. You know, Matt obviously is well within the sort of group of hosts that we have here at the Daily Wire. So clearly whatever is going on is not about Israel specifically. That's really all I have to say about it. As far as the free speech of it, as I've said before, the Daily Wire is a publisher, not a platform. I would never call for anyone to be ousted from an actual platform, X, YouTube. Even people who are, I think, absolutely horrific human beings, I've never called for any of them to be ousted. In fact, I've called for them to have their accounts restored if they've been banned. That's not the same thing when it comes to publishers. Publishers obviously have to decide what sort of things they wish to pay for the publication of, and when it comes to hosts and publishers parting ways, obviously there'll be a non-meeting of the minds. That's pretty much all I can say on that.
So he was asked similar questions during an interview with Piers Morgan. He was a little more reserved there, and let's just get this out of the way, Jen, because I think it's important. Part of the reason why he's reserved and isn't specifically commenting on Candace Owens is because he doesn't want to face the defamation lawsuit. Let's keep it real, right?
Yeah, so look, as a guy who runs a similar company, I can tell you, it's clear why he's hesitant to talk. There's two reasons. One is the political one, which we'll get back into in a sec. But the main one is litigation reasons. So when you let go of an employee, especially one that's on air like that, they're itching to sue you. And the minute he says, well, there's a difference between Israel supporting it or being against it, and then the current government and supporting or being against Jews in general, Jewish people, and that's anti-Semitism, boom, defamation. You just called me anti-Semitic, not a breach of contract, defamation, blah, 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 blah. So Shapiro's in a super tough spot there. He really can't even defend himself because it'll add to the potential litigation that they might have. Would Candace Owens do that though? Just sue him even though she's not anywhere near right to get more money? Of course! So I don't know that she's gonna do it. I don't have any inside information, but I would be shocked if she wasn't threatening that and Shapiro and Daily Wire weren't concerned about that.
So look, I have a lot of mixed feelings on this. So let's start with the free speech absolutist statements coming from the right wing for a few years now, several years now. No one's actually a free speech absolutist. I don't believe anyone who says that they are. Because
doesn't make any sense.
Because the second someone engages in speech that hits your Achilles heel or something that you're like very, very invested in, very sensitive about, all of a sudden free speech doesn't matter, okay?
Of course.
Free speech absolutism. I have yet to see anyone genuinely practice that, live that kind of lifestyle, and prove themselves to be a free speech absolutist.
And not only that, you shouldn't, okay? Yeah. So, look guys, I mean, obviously there you got the spectacular examples like Elon Musk, I'm a free speech absolutist, Don Lemon offended me, you're fired, right? Okay. Come on. But okay, put aside the personal examples, just as a matter of logic. Okay, so is Ben Shapiro supposed to hire, let's say me, right?
Oh my God.
Right? What, do I have a right to get hired by him? Or if I was accidentally hired, he can never fire me, even though he and I disagree on 98% of issues? Well, that doesn't make any sense. He doesn't have any obligation to hire or keep someone he doesn't agree with if he's doing his network.
That could be a lot of fun though. I mean, that would definitely bring some flavor to that network.
Yeah, I hear you, but Daily Wire doesn't have any obligation to hire progressives, and Young Turks doesn't have any obligation to hire conservatives. So
you're sitting next to one right now, Cenk.
That's what I hear, right wing turn. Okay, no, seriously guys, look, we're very open-minded at the network, and you'll see us disagreeing all the time, and you'll see heated debates on TYT, but we're very unusual.
Right.
And so, but that's a choice we're making. I wanna be open-minded.
Yeah,
right?
I agree, yep.
But you can't force someone, pay a guy you don't agree with. That's not a thing.
Yes. Now, look, I suspect that Shapiro has had issues with Candace Owens for some time now. I don't think that this is new. It's just my speculation. But, look, there's the growing, America First base within the Republican Party. They're certainly more isolationist. They certainly do believe in America first, meaning, hey, let's not use our resources on other countries. Let's use our resources, all this hard-earned taxpayer money, on creating a better country for Americans, right? That is definitely a chunk of the Republican base right now. And so that's the reason why he talked about how there's, Matt Walsh, who's in favor of that kind of isolationist ideology. So he's, bringing that up to say, Candace Owens represented that, but don't worry, we still have that viewpoint represented with Matt Walsh. And look, I don't watch Matt Walsh, so I'm just gonna take his word for it and believe him when he says that.
Matt Walsh is very against the current Israeli government.
Okay.
I mean, I don't, what his intentions as to why he is, I don't know, and I don't want to know.
Okay. Candace Owens, though, was pretty brazen about her statements against Jewish people. And I think that's where the problem comes in, right? It wasn't just simply criticism of Israel's government. For instance, Owens began to use her Daily Wire platform to promote anti-Semitism, claiming this month that on her show that secret Jewish gangs terrorize Hollywood.
Yeah, I ran into one the other day, they mugged me. I'm like, oh, it's a secret Jewish gang. Okay, that's insanity. So guys, that gets to my major point here.
Wait, one more. Okay, one more is Owens has contributed or continued to generate more controversy, liking a post on X in which a user accused a rabbi of being drunk on Christian blood. Now, if she was simply critical of Israel's government, I agree with that. Commentary, I agree with that take. Attacking Jewish people, I think, is wrong.
I don't think this is complicated.
No, I don't.
I don't know why people think it's so complicated. It's kind of dispiriting that people think it's hard to figure this out. No, being against the government is perfectly reasonable. That's what, as commentators, we're constantly criticizing the American government. And it depends, doesn't it? Is Trump in charge? Is Biden in charge? Ben Shapiro, Daily Wire, etc. criticize the American government all the time, especially under Biden. We criticize it under Trump and under Biden because we're fair, right? We criticize the Turkish government, the Israeli government, the Russian government, the Ukrainian government. Of course that's within bounds. If you say that, no, Israel is special, and that's the one country you're not allowed to criticize, you're a nut job. And I don't care what you think, and I don't care if you can label everyone who criticizes the Israeli government an anti-Semite. That's an old dirty trick, and guys like Shapiro, unfortunately, the boy who cried wolf, they've done that trick 2,000 times. But now the problem with crying wolf is when the wolf actually shows up. And anti-Semitism is the wolf, it is real. And when Candace Owens says that there's a secret ring of Jews who run Hollywood and DC and that they're sinister, that's textbook anti-Semitism. If you can't tell that that's anti-Semitic, I got bad news for you. That probably means you're anti-Semitic. Like you believe that there's a conspiracy of Jews that run around. Right? Look, guys, there's powerful people that are Jewish, Muslim, Christian, Hindu, etc. Do they try to protect their own interests in different ways? Of course they do. Does that mean there's a cabal and only they're in charge and no Christian is allowed to say anything? They're like, oh, it's the secret Jews that run everything. Yes, sir, yes. Who? Why would Christians or Muslims do that? It doesn't make any sense. And so let alone the drinking of the Christian blood. I mean, if that's not anti-Semitic, brothers and sisters, literally nothing's anti-Semitic to you. Okay, so yes, it's an easy distinction. I think Candace Owens is an obvious, over-the-top anti-Semite. She kept complimenting Kanye West when Kanye West was saying that Hitler's a good guy. It's not hard, it's not complicated. By the way, Megyn Kelly, good question, but the rest of it was a disaster. She tried to have it both ways. Afterwards, she says, well, I can't tell who's right, but and I remember when we used to have the fights with the lunatic on that left our team, right?
Which one?
Jimmy Dore. And yeah, I know, there was a couple. Do you still want me to hire Dave Rubin, who's a total right-winger now? So anyways, and people are like, oh, golly gee, I can't tell who's right? If you can't tell that Candace Owens is wrong when she likes a tweet that says the Jews drink Christian blood, there's something wrong with you. Okay, that's not hard, and that has nothing to do with the Israeli government. And if you think that I'm covering for Israel, watch any other TYT video.
I mean, including stories we did today. So yeah.
Okay, I mean, I've literally called the IDF the biggest terrorist organization in the world. Netanyahu is the top terrorist in the world right now. And if you say that's anti-Semitic, why? You didn't even hear the case. No, you can't say it about Jews ever, even if they're wrong on an individual basis. No, agree to disagree. I can say it. I can say it about Jews just as much as I can say it about Muslims or Christians or Buddhists, okay? But if you say because they're Jewish, they drink Christian blood, have a secretive ring that controls everything, that's cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. Please, guys, this is not hard. And then the last thing is just it's tangential, but Megyn Kelly talking about how the right likes to eat their own. What?
I mean, there is an interesting and growing divide among the right.
There is, but before then, before like 2 weeks ago, there was like the right would support them. Like you agree with the right 2%, they're like, welcome into the tent, right?
Well, yeah.
Right, and the left, you disagree 2%, get out of the tent, you Nazi fascist.
Which is a super smart strategy if you want to build a broad coalition of people to get the preferred policy goals accomplished.
Yeah, but you're right, they are fighting more these days, but it's such a recent development, and normally the right wing never does that. So this is interesting. But here, even though I disagree 100% with Ben Shapiro on Israel, he's definitely right about Candace Owens. I would definitely fire her, and it wouldn't even be close.
All right, we got to take a break. When we come back, Shakira upset about the Barbie movie emasculating her young sons. Why, how? Well, we'll get into a discussion on that and more. Don't miss it.
My brain is still in recovery mode from taking in so many high-level important ideas.
Back on TYT, guys. I'm not. I haven't repeated this enough because a lot of you joined later. We're gonna do some crazy thing in the bonus episode today for members. We're starting Operation Bliss, where I'm gonna try to talk through how to be happier in life. You're gonna say you've got no business doing that. You're right. It doesn't matter. I'm gonna do it anyway. Okay. So come be part of the team. TYT.com/team. Members also get these crazy episodes where we try to actually improve your lives a little bit because we tried through politics and that's been tough sledding. So let's just try to improve your actual lives for a change. So obsessed with positive change in the world. So that's what we're gonna try to do. Come join us today, plus help us become independent so we can keep doing this honest news that you're seeing. So tyt.com/team. Okay, and then look at all these wonderful people that participated. Metal Turtle, thank you for the donation. And same for C Savers 89, I think that's Constantine again, you're awesome. English teacher 1984, JTE Caver, The End, all of you guys, you're beautiful, wonderful people. By the way, if you're gonna give $250 or more, especially check out tyt.com/perks, because then you could get like different things like simplest as a t-shirt. By the way, you get those t-shirts, and Young Turks members will tell you this, they'll vouch for it. I'll see you 20 years later, you're wearing that t-shirt and I know you contributed to that campaign. And I give you a hug and I love you for it and I appreciate you guys.
It's also a vintage collector's item at that point.
Oh yeah, can you get more money for that? I have no idea, probably not. Okay, keeping it real for 22 years straight, but we will appreciate you. Okay, Sexy Speed Racer writes in the member section, oh, ooh, Anna has her beautiful floral dress on today.
It's spring, baby. We're back.
We're back, okay. This is from the beginning of the show. Next TYT reporter says, what mistake? Did you think the wheeled vehicles were tanks? Did you think food service workers were Hamas terrorists? Like, what was the mistake? And then they told you later it wasn't a mistake. They meant to kill them because there was a Palestinian on board. Luke Wise Sam G said, I want to immigrate to the universe where Israel is held accountable for their war crimes. Well, let us know if you get there, brother. We'd also like to be there. Let's go to DJ Flood Music. Hey, Cenk and Anna, I'm a sustaining member and I usually watch your show on the TYT website. But I began to wonder if it would be more beneficial to you guys if I watch on Twitch or YouTube. Does more viewers on YouTube help with traffic metrics and ad revenue? That's a beautiful question. Thank you for asking that. But as it turns out, no, because we love it when people come to tyt.com. It's the same YouTube embed anyway, so it counts, so don't worry about that. But I want to build a community on tyt.com. That's why we're doing Operation Hope and Operation Bliss. I want to build a community that believes in decency and sanity. And why don't we be an entity that pushes those things, good things in the world? Let's go do it. Back on TYT, Cenk and Anna with you guys. Lady Yak wrote in the member section. Cenk, my wife and I voted for you today in Connecticut and we exclaimed, of course, when we did. It was hilarious. I find that hilarious. That's awesome. Thank you for doing that. Everybody knows I'm out of the race, but I am on the ballot in Connecticut today. And so thank you for that symbolic gesture. I appreciate you. All right, and I appreciate Chaplain Fred who gifted 5 memberships and Charlene Avery who gifted 1. Panamba Dragon, thank you for joining. Bizzle, thank you for upgrading. John Smith, Frank Campos, Melody Loves Music also upgraded. Chris D, Just in Time. You guys are awesome. I love this community. Everybody hit that join button below if you can, or tyt.com/team. Anna.
Well, let's talk about Shakira and the Barbie movie, because I guess the Barbie movie is still making headlines. Musical icon Shakira has criticized the Barbie movie, stating that it was emasculating for her 2 young sons who are 9 and 11 years old. I mean,
how emasculated should they be?
I don't know. I don't know how masculine a 9-year-old and an 11-year-old should feel, but okay, fair. Now, the funny thing about this story is it takes twists and turns, okay? Because she says some stuff that I agree with, but she also says some stuff I disagree with, namely her interpretation of the movie. She says, quote, my sons absolutely hated it. It might be because it was a movie targeted at millennial women, but nonetheless, I'll continue. They felt that it was emasculating, and I agreed to a certain extent. I'm raising 2 boys. I want them to feel powerful too while respecting women. I like pop culture when it attempts to empower women without robbing men of their possibility to be men, to also protect and provide. So look, I actually agree with her worldview. I just don't think that it fits with the movie. I think it was misinterpreted. But look, that's the thing with art. It has different interpretations depending on who views it. So if that's what she felt about the movie, if that's how she interpreted it, I guess fine. But again, I do agree with her in empowering both groups, right?
Yeah, I don't get it. So I agree with you, Anna. So yeah, if you say, hey, I don't think there's anything wrong with raising my son to be a male, a strong male, raising my daughter to be feminine, as long as I'm not forcing that on them, right? As long as it's organically coming, I'm trying your hardest to have it be organic. But if they are going in that direction and you want to support that, great. I don't have any problem with that. Like some people say, no, no gender roles. Okay, that's, you want to raise your kids that way. I believe in freedom. You do whatever you think is right, right? But I think it's okay to say, hey, that's who you are or that's how you feel. Terrific. I'm willing to back that out 100%, no matter how you feel, whichever gender role that you pick, right? So now, having said that, I just don't get it about Barbie and why people catch so many feelings over it. So I watched it, and Anna, you're right about it's mainly for millennial women because. And other women from a lot of different age categories, but also I would hope smart guys who get the value of that movie and the art of that movie and the story, etc. But for my young daughter loves Barbie and she's 11, right? But at times she was confused in the movie because it's actually for grown-ups.
Yeah, it is. It's not a child's movie.
Yeah, my son, who's 13, loved the movie because he's a little bit more grown up, and he actually loved Ken. And so afterwards, everybody together, all the girls and boys that we went to the movie with, and we went with a bunch of families, we were singing, I'm just Ken. Okay, anywhere else I'd be a 10. Don't make me sing, and I probably got the words wrong. Anyway, when you watch the movie, guys, the way that I saw it, and it wasn't putting men down. It was saying that, yeah, men have been in charge for a while. If you don't know that, come on, guys. You don't think that men have been in charge? Of course men have been in charge, right? Yeah. And imagine if the shoe was on the other foot, and how would you feel? Oh, I love that. Because that's like, we don't do enough empathy in the world. And whether it's Israel, Gaza, or any other conflict, I always keep saying, please, black and white issues here in America. Imagine if the shoe was on the other foot. And so that's what the movie does on gender roles. It's really smart, really interesting. I don't think it's a shot at men at all.
Listen, men want to protect and provide. Do all the protecting and providing you want, okay? Like, I'm not against that at all. Now, with that in mind, she also said, I believe in giving women all the tools and the trust that we can do it all without losing our essence, without losing our femininity. I totally agree with her on that as well. And I did not get the sense at all that the movie gave us a different message. She continues though, I think that men have a purpose in society and women have another purpose as well. We complement each other and that complement should not be lost. Yeah, I mean, I'm overall fine with that statement. And look.
But that was kind of the point of the movie.
Yeah.
Like, because they didn't say, oh, women should rule and men should be subservient to us. That would have destroyed the whole point of the movie. No, the movie was fighting for equality. Hey, no one should be just in charge. In fact, when they were discriminating against Ken at the end and some of the guys, they were doing it as a symbol of like what we do today to women. Like, hey, you gotta earn it and you gotta go through the thing and we can't give you a quota and just have the Supreme Court be men now, right? You gotta earn your way up. And that's what, as society, we did for 2 women, 4 women, depending on your perspective. That's just true.
So the interviewer, and this is, by the way, an interview on for the magazine Allure. The interviewer responded to Shakira by saying, just because a woman can do it all doesn't mean she should. And Shakira stated, why not share the load with people who deserve to carry it, who have a duty to carry it as well? 100%. Yes, I would like to share my load, okay?
I'm not gonna say the same thing because you're gonna be misinterpreted.
No, I know. But look, when I was coming up, when I was growing up, I remember the dominant messaging toward young girls was, you can do it all, you can do it all, you can do it all, you can do it all. Pursue the career, be a career woman, but also be a mother, a homemaker, a wife. Listen, some women do it all, and they're pretty miserable because that's not a sustainable lifestyle. You know, if that's really what you want, if you want to be a career woman and you want to have a family on top, and a lot of women do it, great. But understand, it's not like I feel like the difficulty of it has been minimized throughout my entire life.
Yeah, that's true.
And it's annoying.
Yep.
Okay, it is incredibly difficult, and when you minimize how difficult it is, I think it actually takes away from the women who are putting themselves through absolute hell to have it all.
Yeah, so I don't think there should be any societal pressure to do X, Y, or Z. Just do whatever the hell you want. And if you're a member of society, look, if you want to be grandparents and you put pressure on your kids to have kids, I get it, right? Because you're being a little bit selfish and you want it for yourself, but at least I understand your motivation. But if you're the rest of society, why don't you buzz off already? Like, what do you care if I get married or I don't get married? A woman gets married or not, has kids or not? It's not your business. So if she wants to have kids and have a job, great. She wants to just have a job, just have kids, great. Why do you care? Why do you put constant pressure on people when it's none of your goddamn business, right? And so, but I'm obsessed with the movie. I'm gonna go back to that because I'm obsessed with the weird criticism. I wanna ask them, do you guys know that the women in Barbie were supposed to represent the men and the men were supposed to represent the women? So if you're saying that Ken and the guys were being discriminated against, that's not anti-men, that's anti-women because they were symbolically representing women's society. Like, did you guys get it at all? I don't know.
Yeah, no, look, I did get that. The only like real critique I have is I feel that that movie came a little late because as a woman living in America who knows what it's like to, experience some discrimination, right? Or people underestimating me because I'm a woman. Yes, sexism exists, but I think it's gotten a lot better for women, with the exception of reproductive rights, of course, right?
That's a massive exception.
But in terms of treatment at the workplace, in terms of attainment of higher education, in terms of working your way up that economic ladder to management roles, executive roles, things have been improving significantly for women. So
yeah, and look, we're on the left, but we don't have to deny that. That's beautiful. That's great. If things have gotten better, it doesn't mean it's all fixed. Like we live in such a nonsensical binary world. Either everything is still wrong and women are discriminated against 100% of the time, or everything is great and no woman is ever discriminated against. That's absurd. Of course, that's not true on either side. The answer is somewhere in the middle. Has it gotten better? Yes. But one of the things, I would argue just as important, if you're concerned about men falling behind now, you're not that wrong.
Right.
If you said men didn't run the world, you're nuts. Of course they ran the world and they ran it into the ground, let's be honest. And so look, we can argue about that. And obviously I'm a guy and of course I believe in equality, right? But we have run the world into the ground. We do nonstop wars for our own ego and pride. Anyways, but right now guys are falling behind in education. And actually pretty significantly so.
Not just that, I mean, there's a real crisis with depression among young men. There's a lot going on that should be addressed for sure, yeah.
Yeah, and just because you're in favor of women's rights doesn't mean that you should ignore your sons and not worry about their legitimate concerns. And the reality is that we've got to pull a lot of those kids back up to parity, hopefully with their female counterparts. Because right now, in an even playing field, at least in an academic setting, girls are kicking guys' asses. And so we got to get help to the guys so they can try to keep up. I'm keeping it real. Those are what the test scores indicate.
Well, when we come back from our final break, we'll discuss Latin American countries because they be beefing. We'll be right back.
on TYT, we've got a combination of serious and fun comments. I'll start with the fun ones here on Super Chat. Robe Life wrote in, and I'm glad I'm not the only robe lifer in this world.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah.
Okay. I've loved robes since I was 7.
Yes.
And now I have a robe closet. And then they ask, when did you become a robe person?
During the pandemic. During the pandemic.
This is hilarious.
Yeah,
okay.
no. I have 2 robes. One is fluffier and warmer than the other. And it takes me approximately 23 seconds to change out of my clothes into a robe once I get home from work.
Oh, that's hilarious. I believe that because it takes her about 23 seconds to leave the building.
Less.
Okay, after the show's over. Okay, now if you thought that was funny, Meowster the Meowing Dragon wrote in on Super Chat just to say, meow. I love our viewers and members. Okay, History Speaks on a much more serious note wrote in, Israel has killed more civilians in Gaza than the murderer Bashar al-Assad did in 4.5 years in Aleppo.
That's insane.
Also, the Aleppo civilians to combatant ratio was 3-to-1. Israel is probably worse. Aleppo was urban warfare with similar pre-war population to Gaza. So not all of Syria, but comparing Aleppo to Gaza, okay? And when you're in that conversation, you've already lost. And so that's the conversation Netanyahu is in. Dawn Whitehead asks, isn't the DNC interfering with the democratic process by not holding primaries in some states? Can they be held accountable legally for not doing so? Well, Dawn, I tried to hold them legally accountable, and it's very, very difficult because number one, the parties say we're a private organization. In South Carolina in court, they said, we don't want to be associated with Uyghur. And we have every right to discriminate against him if we want to. And he's a naturalized citizen, and we don't want that controversy. We don't care about his rights. We don't want to associate with him. And the judge said, okay, yeah, you get to not associate with him. And we try to hold them accountable in Florida. We did a challenge, but then you also have to be a multi-millionaire because you're going to run out of money. They keep bringing you to court, and you run out of money before you can even get to justice. So that's how the Democrats pretend they're in favor of democracy. All right, we'll be back. On TYT, I want to thank Barbara Larcom for joining this. She hit the join button. I've got to read one from Super Chat because they're checking me and I think they're right. YTP Renewed wrote in, not sure if it's fair to accuse Republican voters of opposing abortion access. Not everyone who votes Biden supports his stance on Gaza by comparison.
True.
So very good point. Thank you for writing in on that. And yes, if you're a Republican and you do vote for Republicans, they are going to try to take away your reproductive freedom if you're a woman, they are. But I get it, there's many reasons to vote for or against the candidate. So I shouldn't make a blanket statement about all the voters. But I'm just letting the voters know, don't be surprised if you vote Republican and you get somebody who takes away your freedom. But you're right, you can't make blanket statements because a lot of us vote Democrat and we don't support 90% of what Democratic leadership does these days.
Right. All right, well, let's move on to a different topic because it turns out that the media is shocked by something they shouldn't be shocked by, but it's also a really fun story. So, the Wall Street Journal seems surprised that multiple world leaders from Latin American countries would spar with one another, but here we are. And in a new amusing piece, the publication points to some hilarious taunts that are taking place among leaders of Latin American countries. So, the piece is titled, Ignoramus, Fascist, Small Penis Club. Latin diplomacy devolves into schoolyard taunts.
Okay, the real twist in this story is that I'm in favor of it. I'll explain why in a minute.
I mean, it's amusing, so I guess I'm in favor of it too.
I have a second reason.
So let's get to some of the specifics that were noted in the piece. The article published this morning is a compilation of the most vicious insults that Latin American leaders have recently thrown at each other. Many were said by the ultra right-wing president of Argentina, Javier Milei. Let's give you some examples. Recently, Milei was asked about Andrés Manuel López Obrador, that's the leader of Mexico, of course, who has repeatedly and openly criticized Milei. After the first round of the presidential elections, Obrador described Milei as a conservative fascist. And after his victory in the second round, he said that the Argentine people had scored an own goal. Now, Milei's response was to call Obrador, among other things, an ignoramus, fun word. Obrador's response was to once again insist that he's a fascist. The Wall Street Journal also notes that in the past, Milei has called Obrador's supporters, so the actual voters, quote, the small penises club. I mean, that just screams competent world leader, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. And Milei has feuded with other leaders as well. He lashed out at leftist opponents in Argentina as useless parasites in human excrement. That's not fun. These spats aren't just limited to Argentina either. Last year, Gustavo Petro of Colombia and Lula da Silva of Brazil spoke out after Nicolas Maduro of Venezuela blocked opposition figures from opposing him in the country's presidential election. Here's how Venezuela's foreign minister responded, quote, shove your opinions wherever you can fit them. So tell me why you like this, Cenk. This is dysfunction, no?
No, I don't think so.
Oh, okay.
So, look, Anna's right. It is funny. I'm not missing the humor of it, and I'm not missing that it sounds childish, right? But what's the alternative? So let's talk about America first, then we'll go to the international stage. In my lifetime in America, there's been, really one camp, and me. Now my camp is a lot larger than when we started. But so the other camp, a major camp, is be civil. Don't ever say anything rude about people in power, right? So that this is the NPR camp. Shh.
That hasn't really been the case though, Cenk. I mean, maybe they didn't. Maybe US politicians didn't go around accusing other world leaders of having small penises or whatever, right? But they've definitely attacked other world leaders they didn't like.
No, I mean in the national context. That's why I said I'm gonna separate out US, then get to international.
Yeah, but we're not talking about a national context. We're talking about leaders of different countries, no?
Yeah, I got you. But let me finish. So in the national context, that civility has been a trick to get us to be okay with corruption, etc. Okay, so if you call out politicians as corrupt, especially the ones that are on your side in your party, that was the most uncivil, horrible, crime against etiquette that you could possibly have in America, and it led us down a path of massive corruption and corporate rule. So the fact that that broke down in America created a lot of madness and a lot of chaos, but we finally have people talking about corruption, both on the left wing and the right wing. So, Anna, I'm using it as an example, right? So for the first time, some people on the left wing and the right wing in America are like, hey, maybe AIPAC is leading to corruption, that they seem to be financing a lot of these politicians, and then the politicians seem to be doing what they want. Oh, wait a minute, that's also true of Pfizer and ExxonMobil and all these companies. Before, that stuff was never, ever said in polite company, which is all of TV, all of media, all of politics. Now that that's beginning to break down, you have the bad guys that are springing out, like the leader of Argentina. Yeah, I mean, you're a child, right? I don't like you, you're a smell of excrement, and well, that's the other guy, but you have a small penis, etc., right? I got you. On the other hand, at least we're beginning to call each other out on the things that we're doing wrong. It's extending that analogy. Well, it hasn't gotten to a place where it could be productive yet. So for example, if orders started to break down so much that Western democracies were allowed to criticize Israel, that would be a huge step in the right direction. We've only gotten the bad side here, and that's same thing happened here in America. Chaos ensued after Trump, and that was the bad side. And if you looked at it, you go, oh, that's terrible. But then some positive things started to happen. So I think that us being, or the leaders of different countries beginning to be more honest and less civil with each other, I think can actually end in things being a little bit better, not worse. Because they're so walking on eggshells. It's not just about Israel, guys. On eggshells about Saudi Arabia. Oh, well, we have to be diplomatic about the butcher in Riyadh, and we have to be diplomatic about this and diplomatic about that. And there's good reasons to be diplomatic, to avoid war, etc. But it led to the powerful basically just protecting themselves. And now that they've had it starting to scuffle within the powerful, I think that might ultimately be a good thing.
I don't agree with your point. I think that you're
God
too,
bless.
like your point is too US centric. You're too burnt out on US politicians protecting cover for one another for within the context of the United States. And look, for the most part, the taunts that we're talking about and the taunts that are covered in the Wall Street Journal are not leading to any positive developments on the global stage, with an exception. Not yet, but with one exception. So I love that Lula da Silva came out and spoke out against the anti-democratic actions that are being taken in Venezuela. Because remember, da Silva, Lula, that's how we call him, right? Lula is also a socialist, right? And the right wing here in America likes to make generalizations about all socialists as if all of them are like, would result in what we're seeing in Venezuela, right? The anti-democratic garbage that's currently taking place in Venezuela should be called out, and it should be called out by other world leaders who value socialism.
Totally.
So I agree with you in that there's a potentially positive impact of speaking out like this. A lot of the taunts, though, are not helpful. Calling supporters of the political party you don't like, the small penis club or whatever Malay said, not helpful. But there are certain substantive things that can be said, which I agree could be helpful and could develop, better policies in the future.
Yeah, Lula's a really good example, but there could be a lot more. And remember, in the old days when no one was criticizing back and forth and insulting back and forth, when Lula did it, in that case he happened to be doing it against Venezuela, which I don't think is even fair to call it left-wing. It's more of a dictatorial government at this point in Venezuela. But if he did it against a right-wing government, all of the other forces, especially in the Americas led by United States, would then gang up on Lula and go, oh, you are uncivil, I cannot believe you said that, right? And there was a certain groupthink that you had to abide by. And groupthink is breaking down in the midst of these food fights. And I think groupthink is a bigger problem than the food fight. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I definitely see the groupthink as a huge problem within the context of the United States. But the US, in my experience, has never really held back from criticizing other governments, especially if it's other governments that they're eyeing a potential military conflict with.
Oh, definitely, yeah, and I don't want people to mistake what I'm saying. Anna's 100% right about that. Before, it was groupthink into groups, right? So the US group would lie about anyone that they was trying to control the resources of their country on behalf of their own people. Oh, they'd be like, oh, communist, socialist, terrible, let's see, people should do a coup, hurry up. That son of a bitch doesn't want to sell bananas for less money to Dole, which is a company that owns the US. Whoops.
Yeah.
Right? Oh, Iran's democratically elected government, it doesn't, actually wants to control its own oil, its own natural resource. That's it, do a coup against that son of a bitch. So the US and the democracies did a lot of wonderful things. And obviously I love democracy and I want democracy, but I want it to be real. And the groupthink that came from the capitalist excesses in the US, which I would call corporatism, is what led to the problems and us being hypocritical.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, read the piece though. It's somewhat informative, but also amusing when you get into all the different insults that are outlined in it.
Yeah, 100%. All right, guys, remember today we're doing the wild, wacky thing of talking about happiness on the bonus episode, as we're gonna do on all Tuesdays going forward for members. And today's topic is how to choose happiness. Some of you are gonna wanna kill me, okay? Because like this is the type of thing you're not supposed to talk about and it's annoying and you don't know how hard my life is. I know, brothers and sisters. Let's go have that conversation and see if you get something out of it. If you don't, okay, then boo me, okay? Let's see if I can be happy.
I'll be the first to boo him, okay?
Yeah,
I'll boo him
true.
On your behalf.
Okay, but maybe you get something out of it. Maybe we all get something out of it by sharing our stories together, okay? So tyt.com/team to be part of our team and to help power this channel, but also to get the members only content like the Operation Bliss we're gonna do today. So much love, we'll see you there in a minute.
Obrador